Hello, and welcome to the Wicked Ones podcast. This is Jen.
And this is Tara.
And how are you doing this fine Tuesday evening?
You know, living the dream still. Groundhog's Day, every day, all day.
Living the pandemic dream.
Yes. Yes, and I've just been dealing with, I'm sure you can hear it in my voice a little bit. I've been dealing with sinuses again, you know. You're my sinus soul sister twin. So you know how it goes.
I know all too well. Yeah. It's that time of year where they just flare up and then it's an ongoing concoction of tea and
now I took, did I tell you it was like I think it was like expired by a year, my airborne, and I was like still took it anyway. I'm like, hopefully it's fine.
It's a manufacturer trick. I'm sure it's still
as
good.
Billy always says, it's just a spice. So I was like, it's kind of like a spice. It's like vitamin C. Sure, we'll call it a spice.
That works.
It'll be like my today when I give my story, I'll be like Phoebe with her sexy voice for singing Sticky Shoes. Hopefully it comes across that way.
Oh, I'm sure you will. You'll sound great. You always do.
So what else is going on with you?
We're having the great Thanksgiving debate in our house.
Yes, us too.
It's our numbers keep going up, and they large gatherings or medium gatherings or gatherings in general are definitely frowned upon, and we're not hosting this year, which we usually do, and I know that's sad for the kids, and I feel bad for my grandma because she's home by herself. And
I know
it's just such a sad situation. We'll be okay, but I mean that's like the highlight of our year. Well, one of them was when my brother comes in and he's here for the weekend, and it's mass chaos, and there's dance parties at the end of the night. We just the kids pass out everywhere. I mean, we just have so much fun when he's in town.
Aww.
So
we're kind of the same. I mean, we really enjoy our family gatherings, and we look forward to just football and food and games later on at night. We just sit around and play games, and it's so much fun. And I don't know, I'm getting it from every angle. My brother's texting, my mom's kind of giving me the, I don't know what to do. I worry like you. I worry about my grandparents, and I feel like things here have been getting so much worse, and I don't exactly know how it is there in Indiana where they're at, but I don't want to be the one responsible for getting anybody sick, so
I also don't want to get sick.
Yeah, I don't want to get sick either.
My family is on board with not getting together, but I've had family members who've had COVID. So they don't want to get anyone sick, or, they don't want to get sick again, or they kind of have already gone through or are currently in that situation. So I think they're just scared. So luckily I'm not getting pressure. But I'm still getting the sad feelings from everybody. Everyone's very disappointed.
Yeah, I know. I just think as far as my family back there, they don't really know anybody who has it yet. They still don't. And so
to them, it's not real.
It just doesn't become real, I don't think, until you really know somebody that's struggling through it or going through it. Or even like what you said, even if you're okay and you're not super sick, the time you have to take off from work, the time the kids are home from school, just all of that, the
inconvenience of it all is...
That's definitely something I don't think a lot of people even consider.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just the being sick, it's... going through all of it and getting the rest of your family sick, because it's pretty much impossible to stay in the same house and not everybody get it. And you have to quarantine from the last person's last day of symptoms in your home.
Yeah, so if you're getting it in tandem.
So if you have it on day 10, but if your daughter gets it on day 10, you start over. You're starting on 14. And that just sucks.
It does suck. So we should talk about food instead.
Yeah, so we'll still make lots of Thanksgiving food. Like I told the kids, lots of just feast and
be cooking all the favorites. What is your family like? What's your go-to that the kids and that you guys love?
Well, Stella loves pumpkin pie. That's her favorite. Julia loves all the snacky appetizers. all that kind of stuff.
Girl after my heart.
Yes,
all the snacks.
she loves all the snacks. And she likes mashed potatoes, which it took her a long time to like them. And then when she discovered them, because the texture was weird for her, she's like obsessed.
Maybe she can talk to Chase, because he still won't try mashed potatoes. And he used to love them. That was his thing. I would get for him on his birthday when he was little.
We used to get it from like Kentucky Fried Chicken or something all the time.
Chicken. That was his favorite. He loved their mashed potatoes and gravy. And now he's like, ew, that's gross.
She loves that.
So
but we do all the things, right? The green bean casserole and the hash brown casserole.
Hash brown casserole, the turkey, you gotta have the cranberry sauce that's like super good for you. right out of the can.
I was gonna say the one that's out of the can, because I made homemade cranberry sauce and my family actually booed me.
Oh yeah, I would boo you too. I'd be like, "Where's the 89-cent Ocean Spray?"
My family was like, "Why did you do this? You should. Where's the can?" And I said,
"Canned stuff is so good. I used to eat like an entire can by myself. I was like, funny? Please give me more." Yes, it's amazing. And I only have it on Thanksgiving. Oh. I never think to buy it any other time. It's like all of a sudden, like you just can't have that.
No, we don't buy it any other time either. Mm-hmm. Oh, but it makes me sad. And then all the leftovers that we all eat for days and make it into any sort of.
Well, if we end up staying and cooking, and you guys end up staying and cooking, we might just have to, get a whole. We'll have to swap who's cooking what and share the feast. And,
that'll make it easier and more
fun. Or if we're all good to go and we know we're good, maybe we could get together and actually do some of those fun things. Quarantine together.
Quarantine like we did for Halloween. We avoided all gatherings.
Oh, we did. We did a good job. We had a great quarantine Halloween.
We did. It was very low key, but we still had a lot of. Well, it was low. There was a lot of action. We did a lot of things. We had piñatas and scavenger hunts and games. And
it was amazing.
Pumpkin carving. I mean, we did all the things.
The haunted houses. The Oreo haunted houses.
The Oreo
did
haunted houses.
That already?
No.
Oh my God.
We did and the little mummies. Even the guys did it. We had a blast. But it was just not typical, and obviously a lot less people because it was just us.
Golf cart rides.
So many snacks. We did like appetizers, and then we ordered.
Do you realize though that we totally set the bar high, and now the kids are going to expect this every Halloween?
Only if there's a pandemic, children. Only if there's a pandemic.
Otherwise, it's just trick or treat for you.
Yes, and then go hide in the back room and eat your candy like you usually do.
And they swap. That's what they missed. David said she missed that the most was the trading of candy. She's like, because they get it, and then they have to figure out who's got what. And
I have 5 Butterfingers and 10
I will swap yours. Can I have yours big Snicker bar for my 7, whatchamacallits? Do they even make those anymore?
I don't know. I liked them when they did, though. Yeah. Not that I need any more candy.
Oh, no. For some reason, I've been thinking that I can eat candy now because it's in the house. So I have been eating candy that I never eat candy. You know me. I'm not really I'll do chocolate once in a while, but I'm not really a candy person. And I have eaten my weight in, what is that stuff called? What are they called? All of a sudden I can't think. Sour Patch Kids. Oh yeah. It's like my new favorite thing now. I have to stop. I have to throw it away. It's bad.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a chocolate person, but I'm not really like a candy person.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I was eating them until I was sweating. I was sweating. This is way too much sugar.
You have no taste buds left on your tongue because the sour is eating them all off.
And then I didn't eat dinner because I was full from Sour Patch Kids, and I was I'm really setting a bad example. Kids are like, my gosh, Mom, where are all my Sour Patch Kids? I'm like, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. They must have fallen out of the bag. It's amazing what this quarantine will do to you.
I know.
You pick up all kinds of hobbies, Sour Patch Kid eating. But today you are telling us the final November.
And this was hard. Didn't you think November was hard?
November was really hard. November serial killer birthdays, because they're all very well known. Mm-hmm. And I like to tell my stories less known.
We try. We really try to find something that's not quite as sensationalized. But I did get excited about my story, and I'm excited to tell you why, but you have to wait till the very end of my story to find out what got me interested in it in the first place. And it was this crazy fact that I had not seen, and I think it's been out there, but I've listened to other podcasts on this story before, and I've read articles and articles and articles, and I never saw a mention of this. So I'm hoping I'm going to get you today.
You're pulling a Jen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do you think I chose this case?
Why do you think that this interested me? So today I am going to tell you the story of the lipstick killer. And you know, have you heard this one?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure that you have. So, and I have
I
two.
almost chose this one.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did you research it?
Well, I've read about it before, so I looked into it a little bit.
Yeah. So before, when I was looking into it, I only read like they skimmed through the top, you know, and I think I just looked at like what it was, what happened, who did it, and then that was it. And then now that I've read a little bit more, I'm like, ooh,
there's some meat and potatoes to it.
There is. So let's get going. All right. So, the lipstick killer, William George Heirens. Heirens was born in 1928 in Evanston, Indiana, but he grew up in Lincolnwood, which is a suburb of Chicago, for those of you that don't live here, during the Great Depression. His parents were immigrants from Luxembourg. His family was in the floral business, but it went under when, obviously it's a Great Depression, so the economy wasn't doing so great, and they lost their flower shop. But his father, George, was a laborer, and he took odd jobs, but it was said that he spent most of his meager earnings on socializing with friends. And I thought that was interesting because everything that I read said socializing with friends, and I was like, drinking, gambling, maybe other things among that. Like, it didn't really say.
I actually like that term.
Yeah, I was like, all right. So his mom, Margaret, worked at a bakery, and he was often left with his younger brother with babysitters. So his family life really wasn't as terrible as you might expect from so many of the early life stories that we hear of serial killers. But it was just, there was a lot of turmoil in the home. His parents argued a lot, and it led to him leaving the house just to get away from it all, right? He couldn't stand being at home. And he was said to be a loner who enjoyed technical things. So he liked chemistry, toy airplanes, drawing. I read that he was really good with like anything that he drew with his hands, anything artsy. Like he was just very meticulous when it came to his hobbies, and he was just kind of good at doing these things. So he would draw and repair old clocks. That was just kind of some of the hobbies that he did. I mean, they didn't have technology back in the day, so the kids weren't on iPods and iPads back then. It was interesting.
But they were taking things apart and putting them back together because that's what you did.
Yeah. And that's
because you're curious how things work.
Yeah, and
sometimes it went back together, sometimes it didn't.
Sometimes not so much. But yeah, it kind of reminded me of a simpler time when kids had to figure out what they really were good at, what they were interested in, and what they wanted to spend their time doing. I feel like we need to have another what do you call it? Like no tech week again to kind of have, because the kids they start doing things that you never would think they would do. They just get so creative
all the time.
Yeah, I love it. It's just a great idea. But anyway, so he decided that apparently this wasn't enough for him, and he needed more of a thrill. Again, maybe he should have had the iPod. I don't know. So to release tension, he started burglarizing homes because that's what you do when you want to release tension. So at this point, he is, I want to say he was like 13.
Yeah.
Maybe even younger than that. I don't know that I wrote down the first age that he was when he was burglarizing, but I'll come to when he was first caught. So, but he claimed that he mostly stole for fun. He never really sold anything that he had stolen. But he had like a shed nearby that he would store all of his loot. I called it his loot locker. In my head, I'm like, his loot locker.
His treasure.
Yeah, his treasures.
So he was bored.
So he was just bored, and this was just a way for him to probably do something thrilling and get away with it. Mm-hmm. So it was the thrill of it, really. So yes, and then at 13 years of age, he was arrested for carrying a loaded gun that he had stolen. Never a good idea. And after searching his home and interrogating him, police discovered the unused storage shed on the roof nearby with all of the stolen goods. So he was then, at this point, sent to the Gibault School for Wayward Boys. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But after only a few months there, once again, he was released and he was arrested for burglary again. And then at this point, he was sent to St. Bede Academy. So it's either St. Bede or Bede Academy. It was a school led by Benedictine monks, which you would think that would be just awful, right? But he thrived there. He did really well, and he ended up being accepted into the University of Chicago's special learning program early. So he skipped his senior year, and he started there at the age of 16, which is not something that you hear very often. His parents were unfortunately unable to afford the tuition and board, so he worked several evenings a week part-time, and he started burglarizing again as a way to help pay for his tuition and board. So he's like, I don't
So
know.
then he started selling stuff, I assume. Stealing
Yeah,
and
so
selling.
I read that he still kind of kept everything locked up that he stole mostly, but he started stealing war bonds, and he started doing more things for the cash because he actually needed it for something this time. So, and I thought this was interesting. One University of Chicago graduate, Riva Berkovitz, said that Heirens was very popular, especially in the ballroom dancing class they had together. Took ballroom dancing. And she said, and I quote, I remember the most popular boy in my class who was handsome, smart, and a good dancer. We all wanted to dance with him. The foxtrot, tango, or a waltz. It didn't really matter. So I thought that was interesting that he doesn't sound like your average. At this point, even in the story, I'm thinking, oh, this guy doesn't sound like all the other stories that you normally hear out there, right? I'm thinking, well, this kid actually had something going for him.
Mm-hmm.
So during his second year there, his grades started slipping a little bit. This is when he started dating more and spent a lot less time on his homework, which we see all the time. He had a series of romantic flings. Apparently he got over the fact. I thought this was interesting. He once kissed his girlfriend and vomited right after because when he was 11, he caught a couple having sex, and when he brought it out to his mom, she told him that sex was dirty and led to diseases. I mean, that that was it. He was 11. So he apparently got over that because he started dating a lot, and he had a series of romantic flings, and and I'm sure those burglaries probably took a lot of time to plan as well. So his grades weren't doing as well as they once were. But it was at this time too, in 1945, when Heirens was 17, that the lipstick murders, as they are known, began. So let's dive into the three murders that would become infamously linked together and known as the lipstick murders. The first one was 43-year-old woman named Josephine Ross. On June 5th, 1945, Josephine was found dead in her apartment on North Kenmore Avenue in Chicago that she shared with her two daughters. Josephine had been stabbed multiple times, her body had been washed and the wounds duct taped, and her head was wrapped up in one of her skirts. It was thought that this was a crime of opportunity. Basically, she surprised the intruder, who then decided to kill her. So it was, the police had thought that someone broke in to burglarize, but oh, surprise, she's there. This happened. But no valuables were missing from the apartment.
But they duct tape?
But they washed her body.
No, that's not a crime of opportunity.
Right. Exactly. It seemed.
No. But didn't they try to downplay this to keep from
panic
spreading, if I remember correctly?
You're right. This wasn't even in the papers. Mm-hmm. It didn't even make the papers.
Because the whole, political...
Yes.
Do you get into
right
that?
After the war.
So a huge political... Yeah, you're going to get into all that, I'm sure.
No. Go ahead and talk about it.
No, well, I mean, that was... I remember, the chief of police and a bunch of people getting involved, and they just...
Oh, yeah. The commissioner himself was involved.
Everybody wanted to, solve it, and they were on top of it, and they didn't want to cause alarm. They had everything under control because they wanted to be the best, because they wanted to keep power over the city. I mean, I just remember reading a bunch of different angles.
It's crazy, and I don't go into all of that as much, so I'm kind of glad that you brought it up. No, I mean, I thought it was crazy that this murder in itself was so weird, that duct taped wounds and all of this, and that doesn't make the paper?
No, they wanted to downplay it.
Yeah, well, of course they did.
They wanted Chicago to thrive.
Well,
they didn't want anyone to feel unsafe.
No.
And they were worried, too. Didn't they play it off? I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, keep
that
going.
These soldiers that were coming home, who were they didn't have a lot of money, and they didn't know how to function in society, so they were saying that the increase in crime was due to these soldiers post-war, not knowing how to function in society.
And actually, that's not something that I read in any of the articles.
Really? No.
Yeah, I know, but that's really interesting.
That's what they try to play it off as. It's one of the things.
So they were worried that this was going to come out and this is going to look very negative.
On the city. Gotcha. So they were really just trying to...
No, that's a good take. I mean, I talk a lot about the media leader because you know how we feel about the media. But... yeah, and then several dark hairs were found clutched in her hand. So that was really the only other evidence. So I thought that was crazy, right? That it wasn't something that was talked about. It wasn't in the paper. And you're right, that could be why they downplayed it. That's really interesting. I like that theory. Did they say that in something that you read, that that's exactly what their thinking was?
I mean, That was one. Yes, that was one of the
Yeah.
theories. They wanted to make sure that they wanted people to think that they were safe and secure, and that the city's law enforcement had under control. Mm-hmm. They didn't want anyone to feel threatened and I think it gets worse, obviously, as the murders.
Oh, it does. It
go
gets a lot worse, yeah.
They definitely tried.
There's definitely, yeah, and then they can't ignore it any longer.
Correct.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, here we go. So Josephine's fiance had an alibi, as did her former boyfriends and ex-husbands. Sounds like there were a lot of them. And although they didn't have any suspects at the time, there were accounts of a dark-complected man who was reported loitering at the apartment and running from the scene. But no one was able to identify or locate him. Josephine was known as Josie to close friends and family. I couldn't find much else on her except that she was recently made a widow the previous year. Her husband Herbert had passed away, and she had hopes of possibly starting a restaurant with the insurance money from his death, but that it hadn't yet been received. So I thought that was interesting. She had some plans. Fast forward to winter, and on December 11th, 1945, 33-year-old Frances Brown's naked, bloodstained body was found in her North Pine Grove Avenue apartment in Chicago, which was not far from the Ross residence. I definitely wanted to note that. Martha Ingalls, a housemaid that came to clean, discovered her body when she noticed loud music playing from the radio and the door ajar. So it sounds to me like she might have been coming to clean on another apartment. I couldn't really get that verified. In some places, they said it was her cleaning lady. Not that it matters, but I always try to get all the details right. It said that the door was ajar. So I think maybe she did come to clean the apartment, but her bedroom door was ajar and the radio was really loud. So she pushed the door open and peeked inside, and she saw Brown's blood-spattered bed and a trail of blood leading to the bathroom, where she found her in the bathtub, like sprawled out across the bathtub, actually. She had been shot in the head and brutally stabbed. And this part's really bad. There was still a butcher knife that was like lodged in her neck. It had gone like completely through her neck to the other side. That's severely brutal, and there's a lot of rage there. There's a lot of rage in this. No, and yeah. From the articles that I read too, it just said, and her body was treated very similarly to Josephine's. But there's differences, right? There's stabbing over here.
Well, there was no gun.
There was no gun.
And I'd be curious to know if the stabbing was post-mortem or after the gunshot.
Mm-hmm. It said stabbing was post-mortem.
Okay.
Yes.
That's serious rage.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they're not playing this one down as a burglary as well.
Well, again, it seemed to police that she had interrupted a break-in and was a victim of circumstance.
Lies.
You guessed it.
Lies.
So nothing had appeared to have been stolen. So in both cases, it's a burglary gone wrong and nothing is taken. I mean, if he's gonna kill them, and if he can't, we might as well do what he came for. And
no, if you're burglarizing something, you don't hang around and stab the person and put them in the bathtub.
No, you don't do all of those things. But what I'm saying too is, if you were there to burglarize in the first place, you're gonna take something before you go. Why wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
You know?
And if you kill the person, you're probably gonna take even more.
Yeah.
Because now you have time to like loot the whole place.
Do whatever you need to do. Yeah, so it doesn't make sense to me either. Thank you. Nothing appeared to have been stolen, but someone had scrawled an eerily written message in lipstick on the wall of her apartment. And this is where I want to show you the note, okay? So, you guys are going to hear some rustling of paper. Here you go. Okay, so here's the note. And as you can see, it says, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." But look at how it's written. That's interesting, right? Have you ever just sat and really looked at that? Like those C's look like E's. There's like a weird backwards T.
Well, and it's also a combination of cursive and capital letters and lowercase letters.
So if you saw this, what would you think?
I feel like it's a setup. I don't know. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
someone tried really hard to make it look this way.
Mm-hmm. Don't you think you would have to? You would have to take your time to make those letters be that. I would have to take my time to really think about, okay, this is going to be a cursive letter. Now this one's going to be backwards. Now this one's going to look like this. It just doesn't seem like somebody just scrawled it on the wall, right?
No, I agree.
And how could you even begin to match that up with somebody's handwriting? I don't care how I write. If I have lipstick and I'm writing on a wall, do you think you're going to be able to match that up to my handwriting?
No, not at all. I will say though, I'm impressed that the letters match.
Mm-hmm.
So every time there's an F,
Yes.
it's a capital F.
Uh-huh.
Every time. I mean, like every letter matches.
Right.
So it's not like it's a capital F and a lowercase F.
Right.
Like there's
There was some
definitely
thought put
there's
into
consistency. Yeah.
Because if you were just randomly scrawling something and wanted it to look crazy on the wall, I don't think that you would take the time to match the letters like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I'm glad we talked about it. I wanted to get your take on that too. Okay, so police did note a bloody fingerprint smudge on the door jamb was found at the entrance door, and there was a possible eyewitness to the killer's escape. George Weinberg heard gunshots at 4 a.m., and John Derrick, the night clerk stationed in the lobby, gave a statement that he saw a nervous-looking man of 35 to 40 years old, about 140 pounds, leaving the elevator, fumbling his way out of the door onto the street, and then he left. So, I mean, there's eyewitnesses all the time in just about every case that I read. You know, there's always something, somebody saw something, and sometimes it's multiple things. Whether it matches up or not, it's just interesting that this is what they saw, and this was noted. So just kind of keep that in mind too. Frances was described, I always like to try to get a little info on the victims, but Frances was described as a homespun girl from Richmond, Indiana. She went to business school, was a hard worker, and had a great job with A.B. Dick Company. During the war, she enlisted in the Navy, and she used her office skills to work as a telegrapher. She spent 3 years in the service, and then she returned to her job after the war in August of 1945. So she had just gotten back and kind of settled. She hadn't been home long. No, she hadn't been home long at all. Suspects in her death were few, but the lipstick note, as you might guess, the media fire was lit, right? Like the media was all over this.
That's exciting.
You know that everybody's going to be trying to get the scoop, right? Especially back then. Who could scoop who could have the first, who was first to the headlines. This was a very big deal in the papers. Like, and everybody read, it almost felt like back then, if you read it in the papers, it must be true.
I think there was a pride in being accurate in your reporting, as opposed to how many clicks or sales you can get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. Like you wanted to be first, but you wanted to be right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we already talked about this, but I had mentioned in my notes that Josephine's murder didn't even make the paper, but now that they had the lipstick killer on their hands, the Brown murder was all that anyone could talk about. 4 days after the murder, the Chicago police announced they had reason to believe the killer was a woman. And this was mainly because "for heaven's sake" was a term thought to be more feminine. What do you think about that? Wow, if you guys hear that, the wind is getting after it. There's a major storm going on out there.
Storm going on. For once, it's not my children. Well, they don't mention the lipstick in that.
They don't. They just say that "for heaven's sake" is more of a like female term. I thought that was interesting. Something to think about, you know, while you listen. Okay, and then a local butcher, George Caraboni, actually confessed to the crime. But when his story changed several times, the police couldn't take him seriously, even though he was under investigation for 13 other murders in Ohio, in which women had been beheaded and dismembered. The police ended up having to let him go. And it was probably more because, you know, hey, we don't want to have to deal with them here in Chicago anyway. You take them, Ohio.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
Like,
if they probably, the MOs probably didn't match. And...
Well, it didn't really. I mean, he didn't behead anyone, but he almost did. I don't know how I don't know. But yeah, you're right. The MOs are a little bit different. But still, the fact that he confessed, but he didn't really know the details, you know. Who knows why people confess, but they do it all the time, right?
Sometimes I feel like they want more credit. It's so weird.
Right. Well, I already have 13. Might as well confess to a few more. So the headlines start to fade. The police had no other leads. And as I mentioned, the war had just ended and Americans were really eager to celebrate their first peacetime Christmas in 5 years. I get it, right? Nobody wants to think about this right now. They just want to move on, right? It's been a while. They don't have any leads. But then January 6, 1946 would pretty much bring the city of Chicago to its knees with the news that sweet, innocent 6-year-old Suzanne Degnan in the Edgewater district had been kidnapped from her home and brutally murdered. January 6th was the end of the holiday vacation for the students at Sacred Heart Academy, and the next day, the Degnan girls would be returning to school. Mrs. Degnan recalls waking up that night, hearing the barking of dogs nearby, which wasn't uncommon, and she thought she heard some men talking on the street. So she woke her husband up. Then she thought she heard Suzanne crying, but, they waited a few moments, and they didn't hear anything, and so they just went back to sleep, which, I cringe. It just makes me so sad that she didn't just... Something in her made her wake her husband up. She should have gotten up and walked in to check on the kids. I think about that. And I always think about that too. Like what you said.
Remember what I said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You said no matter what, when you wake up,
every single time I wake up, I do a bed check.
That's amazing. And I have
because something had to wake me up. I don't know why. So I have to do a bed check every time.
I think that's a good
Could you imagine if there was a camera at night? I'd probably do 15 bed checks.
Oh my goodness, I'm up all the time.
Their shoes again.
But I think about that and it makes me feel bad. I got my fan running and I got, you know what I mean? And I think whatever wakes me up, I should get my ass out of bed and check on the kids. I'll be like, all right, what would Jen do? She'd get up and she'd go.
She's obsessive compulsive.
That's okay. It's not a bad thing to be obsessive compulsive. I just think that as a mom, I would just never be able to forgive myself for not going and checking. Yeah. But it's, I'm not saying it's her fault. I'm just saying I would just, that would be something I would never be able to get over. The next day, Suzanne wasn't in her bed. Her bedroom window was open and she was nowhere to be found. A 7-foot ladder stolen from a nearby nursery was outside her window, and on the floor of the bedroom they found a note. And it read, "Get 20,000 ready and wait for word. Do not notify FBI or police. Bills in 5s and 10s. On the back it said, burn this for her safety." And this is the note.
So they didn't burn it?
They did not burn it, no. So, and it almost looked like it was written on a really long piece of paper, or maybe that's just how it photographed, but I had to kind of blow it up for you. But as you can see, it's written kind of...
With a lot of misspellings?
A lot of misspellings. Like it was maybe written by someone who wasn't as intelligent or trying to appear like they weren't as intelligent. I don't know. But
it's $20,000 in 5s and 10s. What kind of bag are you carrying around?
I don't know. Right? 20,000 in 5s and 10s, yeah. It would be...
That's a big bag.
Yeah, it is. You think of some of these things that I'm just like, wow, I did not think about that. But now I'm thinking about this and I'm wondering how big of a bag you would need.
Yeah.
Now I might need to know.
Well, it just...
We're talking gym bag? We're talking what are we talking about?
We're talking
here?
big band.
So at this point, everyone's on high alert due to the nature of the crime. Even the police commissioner was personally involved in this one. As you mentioned, it was very political. They wanted everybody to know that this cannot happen.
They had it under control.
Mm-hmm. Especially because, here goes. It's always hard to talk about. But acting on an anonymous tip, police discover what appeared to be the head of a golden-haired doll. Sadly, they always say it's never a mannequin, and in this case, unfortunately, it wasn't a doll either. Suzanne's head was found in a sewer a block from the Degnan residence, her right leg in a catch basin, her torso in another storm drain, and her left leg in yet another drain. Her parts were so scattered about that her arms weren't found until another month later in another sewer. So they were just spread out all over the place. But good God, right? This 6-year-old girl was just stolen from her bedroom and dismembered. I can't even imagine how people would, even as desensitized as we are today with everything happening all the time, something like this happening.
No, that's...
Can you imagine this back then? I'm sure everyone was
even now it makes me sick to my stomach to think about it.
Absolutely. But I'm just saying something like this, if it were to happen today, would still be probably this sensationalized and huge and international, and we would all be just, you know what I'm saying? That's basically what I'm trying to say.
It would have the same effect today.
It would have the same effect today. I really think it would. It was just awful. Blood was found in the drains of laundry tubs in the basement laundry room of a nearby apartment building where it was believed that the killer took her body and dismembered her. So it was thought that she was taken from her bedroom window and strangled killed, subdued somewhere between her apartment and then this laundry room. And this is actually a picture of the laundry room area. And if you want to flip it over, it's a picture of where they found the first body part in the storm or in the sewer right there. So as you can well imagine, one of the most intense manhunts ever conducted in the entire nation was set into motion. Police questioned hundreds of people, gave polygraph examinations to approximately 170, it said, and several times they claimed to have captured the killer, though everybody was eventually released. And I'll talk more about a few of them later. But I do think it's important to note this. A man called the Degnan residence several times demanding ransom, but hung up before any real conversation could take place. So they never really got to talk to this guy, but they called several times. And Chicago Mayor Edward Kelly at the time also received a note, and it said, "This is to tell you how sorry I am not to get old Degnan instead of his girl. Roosevelt and the OPA made their own laws. Why shouldn't I? And a lot more." So this is, at the time, there was a nationwide meat packers strike, and the Office of Price Administration, the OPA, was talking about extending rationing to dairy products. Degnan was a senior OPA executive recently transferred to Chicago, and at this time, another executive of the OPA had recently assigned armed guards after receiving threats against his children. And in Chicago, not too far away, a man involved with black market meat had recently been murdered by decapitation. So this is like another big political thing going on at the time. So police considered the possibility that the Degnan kidnapper was a meat packer. And also the other reason that they considered it too is because of
she's cut
her body. Yes, because of her dismemberment and the fact that they said that the cuts were made by somebody that was skilled in cutting. Precise. Very precise. So like a surgeon or someone who's used to cutting meat, that could have been either or. So summer eventually arrives in Chicago, and the hunt for the killer hadn't slowed down. You can imagine the fire under everyone's ass to catch this monster. Like, it was just, I'm sure that they were feeling the heat every single day. And this is where we left off on William Heirens and how he fits into the case. On June 26, 1946, 17-year-old Heirens was caught burglarizing an apartment, which just so happened to be near the Degnans' residence. He made his way to a nearby building, but someone saw him and called the police. He tried to escape down a stairway, but officers Tiffin Constant and William Owens boxed him in. So I'm imagining him like in the middle of the stairway, one officer down at the bottom, the other one at the top. He's trapped. He has nowhere to go, right? So it was then, well, I didn't really put this part in because I didn't think it was that important, but it said that he drew a gun on him, and there was just so much conflicting like hearsay on this part. So he said he held the gun up, and because he was felt trapped, he didn't know what to do, but the officer said that he actually fired twice and it misfired. He said that he basically tried to kill the officer. He said he never did that. So I kind of initially left that out of there. But it was an off-duty officer that saw what was happening, and he rushed to help. He wasn't armed, but he managed to grab 3 clay flower pots nearby and drop them from above onto his head, knocking him out. And that's
kind of like out of a cartoon.
Right? Doesn't it
Bugs
sound...
Bunny, or what is it? Roadrunner? What, you remember the
with the coyote?
Coyote,
yeah, it does. It sounds like, I don't know.
Or Tom and Jerry, where they're like shooting each other, but everyone's still alive.
Yeah, no, it sounds exactly like that. And I thought the same thing. I just started laughing. I'm like, oh my God, what? He got him with a flower pot? Okay. And I think I read in one other account that this off-duty officer was wearing swim trunks. I swear. I couldn't find it again, so I didn't put it in there, but I'm going to say it, and it just makes the story even better. Off-duty officer to
the rescue.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you can just picture it. So, after he was knocked unconscious, he was then transferred to Bridewell Hospital, which is the closest one to the Cook County Jail. Heirens later said that he was interrogated around the clock for 6 consecutive days by being by being beaten by the police and not allowed to eat or drink or speak to a lawyer. He was not allowed to see his parents for 4 of the 6 days. He said he was strapped to a bed and given injections of sodium pentothal, which without anyone's consent, obviously, and without a warrant. And this is a drug that was known at the time as truth serum because it weakens the functions of the brain. But today we know it doesn't really work that way. It's more commonly used as a short-term anesthetic or like a lethal injection drug. I guess they use it for that too. But this is awful. He said he was also given a spinal tap without any anesthetic. Can you imagine? I remember doing that with anesthetic, and I thought it was awful.
Why are they giving him a spinal tap?
And I don't know if they did a spinal tap with the sodium pentothal drug. Mm-hmm. It didn't say what they gave him, like what it was for or with, right? Why would you do that? Do you know?
No, that's why I'm asking.
You can't, like, why do they normally do spinal taps other than when you're going to have a baby and they give you an epidural?
Well, I mean, it's usually for pain.
Mm-hmm. Well, apparently they were doing it to inflict pain. It doesn't say exactly what they were doing with that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It is interesting.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, well, now all these things that we say we're going to look up and tell you later, aren't you glad that we actually do?
Well, sometimes at 2 a.m. I do, but I never share it later, after the bed checks.
I look everything up and I'm like, I gotta remember to tell everybody.
Exactly.
I found out this answer. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, I totally forgot.
I feel satisfied.
Yeah, you can look it up. You have Google. We have Google. You have Google. Google. Okay. So under the influence of the drugs, he was interrogated for 3 hours. And afterwards, it was said that Heirens talked about an alternate personality named George Merman. He said George might have committed the murders. And again, with the press, George is Heirens' middle name, and the media thought Merman sounded a lot like Murder Man. So the printing presses went wild, accusing him of the guilt right?
Maybe he was a merman, like a mermaid.
Maybe he was. Maybe he was so fucked up on drugs, he didn't know what he was saying.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, let's just, oh my God.
It just kills me. I don't know. So obviously, Heirens claims he has no memory of the interrogation, and no one can look back at the records.
Because he was roofied.
I know.
Come on,
guy.
Like, he wakes up and he's like, I don't know what just happened.
He probably doesn't remember.
I thought this was a dream.
Yes. Anything from that whole time. I don't know. Just no one should be treated like this. I can't believe it was even, like, legal to do. It wasn't legal, but I can't believe they got away with it. I don't know. Okay, I'll just keep going.
They wanted to pin it on somebody.
They had to have their guy.
Mm-hmm.
They had to catch somebody. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So he obviously claims he has no memory of this interrogation, and no one can look back at the records to find out what exactly was said because the original transcript.
The transcript skipped out.
Yeah, the transcript skipped out. Exactly. It disappeared. So in 1952, Dr. Grinker, a psychologist who had taken part in the interrogation, actually came forward and said that Heirens never actually implicated himself in any of the killings. And I wonder if that was the first time that he said something. I don't know, that's what I wrote down in my reading, and I'm wondering if, really that was the first time that they tried to look back into this. I don't know, could be. Wasn't really that long after. But anyway, on July 12th, 1946, William Heirens was charged with assault with intent to kill. So that was the pulling the gun on the officer. Robbery, 23 counts of burglary, and 3 counts of murder. And I talk a lot about the media, but I think it's really important to remember that newspapers had so much influence. When they ran with the murder man story, making Heirens out to be a modern day, basically Jekyll and Hyde, the public ate it up, right? They're thinking, oh, this guy's crazy. Of course he did it, right? Mm. So what do we have in the way of evidence, and what are the thoughts here both ways? Let's go over it. Number 1, even though the handwriting experts could not link Heirens' handwriting to the lipstick message, the police claimed that his fingerprints matched the bloody smudge print that I mentioned was found on the door jamb of Brown's apartment. Okay? But later, we find out that this supposed fingerprint they found appeared to have been rolled on the door jamb, as if it was possibly planted there from like an evidence card. You know, when you go to fingerprint people and you take their thumb and then you roll it, that's what it was. Mm-hmm. So that's fishy and suspicious in itself. 2, a print that was left, the little finger. Nope, I'm reading that wrong. A print of the left little finger, okay, also allegedly connecting Heirens to the ransom note, even though it only had, and there was some discrepancy in the things that I read, but I'm going to go with 9 points of comparison. Some things that I read had less, but you know what? We're going to go with this one just because. Do you find that all the time, right?
All the time.
All the times there's discrepancies
it's in bits of discrepancies.
Age or whatever. I don't think it's really that important to be completely accurate on this. Just know that the FBI standard is 12 points, and because even if it was only 9 points of comparison where they were comparing the loops, the print could possibly match up to like a further 65% of the population. So you can't consider that a match. But they did. And also, so the third point, of course, the story of George Merman, which we talked about, the alter ego could have done all these awful things. As we know, could have also been due to the severity of drugs. We kind of really talked about that, but I still want to know what happened to the script. What did we say about that?
The transcript?
The transcript that skipped out. And then among, the fourth thing,
well, how can they even use that if they don't have it?
I don't know.
So they talk about it and then it disappears, but they can still use it? So shady.
Well, and I mean, they probably put the people on the stand that were there and they testified to, oh yeah, he said all those things, you know, but it's gone. Or they had it, but who even knows? It could have been doctored. I mean, even if they had the transcript, who wrote the transcript, you know? Okay, and then number 4, among Heirens' loot locker, the loot locker, I don't know what to call it, but that sounds good. The police found a Nazi scrapbook and a copy of a book titled Psychopathia Sexualis, which honestly, that doesn't look good at all. I don't have a lot to say about this one. I can't really back him out of this one, but it's basically a historical book depicting dark fetishes and sexual oddities, and it included stories of famous dismemberments and other sadomasochistic crimes. But even though it's not cool to have those things, somebody with the academic background that he had, the fact that he was actually studying German in college as well, I don't know, I could see these books might be appealing to a boy his age to steal just to look at because he's curious, because it's different. I mean, it's just way different than any other thing that you normally find. And technically, we talk about murder every week, and if somebody looked at my browser history, I might be in trouble.
Oh, I'm totally going to jail.
Yeah, nobody should look at our...
Well, how do they know it's the same person that did all 3 of these?
So that's exactly what I thought when I was reading through these. It didn't seem like they even linked up, right? My thought when I read it, just even to this point in the case, I thought, okay, they needed somebody to go down for all 3 of these. So you're going down for this case, you might as well confess to these 2 other cases, and I'm going to just wrap this up in a neat little bow and call it a day. And that's exactly what it looked like to me, too. I don't know how you go from those women to this.
Cutting up a child.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was different, too. They found a ladder outside her. There was a ladder found outside her window. That wasn't ever in any of the other MOs. I mean, it looked like they just basically went for whatever door was open, you know?
Maybe even followed them, stalked them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yep. Keep your thoughts coming, John. Keep them coming. I know. So then also among Heirens' stolen goods, they found a small surgical kit. I know, again, another point against you, buddy. I'm sorry. He claimed, though, that he would use it to remove the serial numbers from the war bonds that he started stealing. So, and I have to say on this point, the lab tests do show that none of the instruments were used on a human being. But this didn't matter to the press. Once word got out, they had another field day. Like, can you read the headlines?
Oh, yeah.
Splashed across the front page, dissecting kit found. Immediately became the headline. And then...
I'd click on it.
Oh, yeah. Totally click on it.
Obviously, they're not clicking on it. Not then, but...
You didn't have clickbait back then, but they knew exactly how to do it. They knew what they were doing. So it said that he was actually in his cell in jail. He hadn't confessed to anything at this point, and he heard the story going out over the radio, telling the public all the dirty details of how he, William George Heirens, had murdered all 3 of the victims. He was shocked. He was upset. And he yelled, "I didn't confess to anybody. Honestly, my God, what are they going to pin on me next?" So that's what he said from his cell. He's hearing this over the radio.
That's so scary.
That is scary.
That's movie worthy.
Yeah, and you're just like in there and you probably feel like you're in the Twilight Zone. I have no idea. That would just be awful. And then also, I want to note too, in his confession, he stated that he disposed of, because obviously we're getting to the point where he confesses, right? We all know that he confesses. Well, if you didn't know, spoiler alert, in like the next couple of paragraphs, he's going to confess. So in his confession, he stated that he disposed of the hunting knife, which he used on Suzanne, in the elevated subway tracks near the scene of the murder. Okay. The police never did search the L tracks, however. So learning of this, reporters inquired with the track crew if they had found a knife. They had found one on the tracks and they kept it in the Granville Station storage room. So the reporters basically go back, they get the knife, and they determined that this knife belonged to a Guy Roderick, same person who had his Colt 22 caliber gun stolen, that was also found among his, in his loot locker. So on July 31st, Guy Roderick positively identifies the knife as, yes, that's mine. And Heirens acknowledged that he threw the knife in there from the L train, claiming that he just didn't want his mom to see it. And for this one, I really have nothing. It doesn't look good either that he like knew of this knife and this knife was there. But it was a hunting knife.
But he
for one
told them about the knife?
He told them about the knife.
I never read this part before.
Yeah, so this is the part that kind of threw me off a little bit. But they did test the knife and scientifically couldn't match it to being involved in any type of murder. There was no proof that it was used.
But he said, I did it, and the knife I used is over here, and it was there.
And it was there.
But it doesn't seem like it was the knife that was used in the murder.
Well, it was a hunting knife. Wouldn't that have a serrated edge? Wouldn't that not have a clean... Am I wrong on that? I don't hunt. So I'm not really sure. But I feel like it would just not be the same as like a surgical instrument. Right?
So they said a surgical instrument did the stabbing? I don't know. I don't know what kind of knife did the stabbing.
They just said, well, not the stabbings. They didn't.
Or are they talking about the dismemberment?
The dismemberment.
Okay.
Yeah. So his lawyers, although it is believed that they had good intentions, worked with the state's attorney's office and they pushed for Heirens to take a plea deal that would allow for basically just one sentence if he pled guilty to all three murders. So they're like, okay, we'll make this deal with you. You wrap this up neatly. You confess. You're in for like one count, right? But when it came time to confess publicly, Heirens went back to his original story, that he was innocent and he had nothing to do with any of the murders he was being charged for. So they're getting upset with that this is taking longer. It's not all neatly, stowed away like they thought. So his plea deal was then changed to 3 consecutive sentences instead of 1. And his lawyers still leaned on him heavily to take the deal because they were afraid of the death penalty. Honestly, they wanted to keep him out of the chair, so they thought this was the better deal.
The deals.
I mean, it really stinks. Like thinking about it and looking back, that he didn't have a defense team that was looking at all of these things, going, "There's no way we have to fight for this kid." Mm-hmm. But nobody did. They were so worried that he was going to get, the death penalty, and yeah. Ultimately, as I mentioned, Heirens would take the deal. He gives a confession on August 7th, 1946, and he was given the 3 life terms. Heirens ended up being a model prisoner. He helped several of his fellow inmates get their GEDs, and he was the first Illinois inmate to receive a college degree while in prison. That was interesting, and I'm not surprised. He just seemed like that. He seemed like he was going in that kind of direction, with his academics. Many researchers, journalists, and lawyers have provided evidence of doubt in Heirens' case to date. Many believe that he would never, ever have been convicted today. Of course not. I mean, we see the people that get off that shouldn't get off today. Yeah, no, I mean, they just get off and they write books about how they did it, and then they're,
But you can't do anything about it then? Yeah,
do anything about it.
It's...
I don't know, just... So, I mentioned a few of the pieces of evidence used against him, but... Recently, I read that 29 inconsistencies have been found between his confession and the known facts of the crime. It has since become the understanding that the nature of the inconsistencies is a clear indicator of false confessions. And there was a name for this. I want to say it was called the Reed technique. And I know I'm probably saying that wrong because I couldn't find it. Remember, it was one of those things I told you I was trying to find. But it was like a technique used in interrogations at this time period that was basically, this is how they treated people when they thought you were guilty. They just beat the shit out of you and shot you up with truth serum and just he didn't have any rights. And this was common. I mean, so this was like right around the time that was used as an interrogation method. So, and yes, they said that a study had been done that, of course, to nobody's surprise, that it elicited a lot of these false confessions because people couldn't take it anymore. They would confess to anything.
Yeah, well, they weren't in their right mind or body.
No. So it was at this point in my research that I crossed my fingers and I looked up John Douglas because I thought I remembered that he gave his professional opinion on this case. I was very excited to find out that I was right, and I wanted to share with you his thoughts. For those of you who don't know who John Douglas is, he's a retired special agent with the FBI and one of the first criminal profilers. He's written several books on criminal psychology that definitely don't disappoint, and I highly recommend all of them. But let's go over his thoughts quickly because I was happy to see that he had the same issues as I did with the notes, and you too, and when we were going through here, he thought a lot of the same things that we were questioning about the murders themselves. And I didn't even think they were connected when I was reading them. And that's, again, what you had said, like, are these even connected? I mean, I doubt it. So John mentioned that Heirens is one of the serial offenders that he and his partner interviewed back in the 70s. He mentioned that there was nothing arrogant or sinister about his presence. He wasn't intimidating. He was very polite during the interview and maintained his innocence, which obviously we know doesn't really mean anything, but I think that just stood out to him because most of the people that they did interview, these serial killers, were not this way. They didn't act like this at all. They were very egocentric and...
Well, a lot of them want credit once they're convicted.
Yeah. A lot of them do. And he mentioned after the interview that it just bothered him that, maybe this guy was telling the truth and he was innocent and he was, wasn't rightfully imprisoned. And he said that he was affected by it so much that he gathered the files and he set to work right after this looking at the case. And as he did, he said the evidence was incriminating. The fact that he had a background that was very much like repeat, predators, that was a check mark against him, obviously. A risk-taking loner, yes. The fact that he almost burned his house down with a chemistry set as a kid and was caught later trying to jump off the roof and fly with homemade wings. These are all things that are just like, just kind of point in the wrong direction with kids and what they're willing to, test out for a thrill, right? The burglaries, the gun charges, the correctional school history, and of course the books that were found on him. It pointed to the fact that there may have been some sexual perversion. The neighborhoods were also well within his comfort zone, and as he mentioned, something that I thought was really interesting, he said, and I quote, "He equaled the feat of those other notorious Chicago killers, Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, convicted of the thrill murder of Loeb's 14-year-old neighbor. This was because of his intellect." And of course, then there were the fingerprints. So he was looking at all of this evidence that was against him. And he had so much more to say, and I would have had to add an hour to my story, which we're probably already way over, that I felt was interesting. But ultimately, he got down to the nitty-gritty of it all, and he gave a profile. He said, if he were advising the Chicago PD after studying the Ross and Brown murders, he would tell them to look for a white male in his late 20s to 30s who already had a history of break-ins. The unsub would be control-oriented and have a lot of rage, which was evident by the overkill, right, and the repeat stabbings. Neither woman was aggressive or lived a high-risk lifestyle, so he would agree that they were crimes of opportunity, basically that they happened to be home when the intruder broke in. He said the murder showed a strong degree of criminal sophistication and escalation of acting out rage against women, which is, again, why he would profile an older man. He felt that the lipstick message could be a taunt from a narcissist playing off press coverage, but it could also have been a red herring implanted there by the press, which is one thing that we thought could have been a possibility. So, who wanted to make the story more sensational, right? Mm-hmm. Again, there's so many great insights, so if you want to look at the whole analysis, please check out Law and Disorder, the book, because I only took the its and bits that I thought were really relevant here. But ultimately, John would say he would have considered Heirens too young to pull off the crime and the detail of sophistication that would have taken in the Dagnan case. He said, and I quote, "He wouldn't go suddenly from casual, if repeated burglaries, to the murder and mutilation of a 6-year-old child, brazenly taken from her own bedroom. It just doesn't happen like that." And I think that's what we all thought, right?
That they don't match.
Why? Yeah. So he would have directed the police to take a closer look at one of the suspects that I haven't told you about yet. that of Richard Russell Thomas. He was a 44-year-old sitting in jail in Arizona at the time for molesting his own daughter. Piece of shit. The forgery unit there in Arizona thought they saw similarities between the ransom note to the Thomases and his handwriting that Richard Russell wrote with his non-dominant left hand. It tells later why. So I know I was kind of like, wait, so they have this guy in jail and they see, I mean, obviously the press published this note, so you know everybody's seeing it. Mm-hmm. And somebody just happened to look at it and go, matches this guy's handwriting. And I was so confused at the time.
In Arizona?
Yeah, in Arizona. But at the time of the Degnan murder, he was in fact in Chicago working as a nurse at a nearby hospital. He was known to hang out around the auto dealership just blocks from the Degnan home. And I wanted to say too that I don't think I put it in here, but he used to pretend to be a doctor too. He would like try to.
So he was a nurse pretending to be a doctor, hanging out at
auto dealerships, molesting children, breaking. Oh yeah. I thought the same thing. I thought, how does this guy even get to work with his criminal record? I don't know. Maybe he had just been. This was like his. I doubt this was his first time in jail, but when he was picked up, he confessed to the crime. He said, "I did it," but he didn't seem to know all the details, so the police let him go after he later recanted his confession. So it was another case of maybe where they were like, all right, you need to go back to Arizona, buddy, because they want you for this, this, and this. Or we're not going to take you here because you're already there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's like,
They're like, all right, it doesn't match perfectly. You move on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But let's look at the facts. 1, he was a burglar with a bold and risky MO. 2, his history of domestic violence and abuse. 3, he worked as a nurse and stole surgical supplies. 4, he was convicted in the past for extortion and for sending a ransom note threatening the kidnapping of a little girl. So this guy's been familiar writing these ransom notes and these things. So this is probably where they got the handwriting analysis from. It didn't say, but now reading, when I got to that part, I was like, okay, now I get it. And then 5, Suzanne's arms were discovered in the sewer directly across from the car dealership. Okay.
Praise Jesus.
I mean, do we need any more than that? Why wouldn't they look further into this guy? I just don't understand. That's what Douglas said. He said this is the guy that he would have wanted police to take a closer look at. And I want to note here too that there were other suspects, but this was the guy that I liked the most for the murder. And I'm not really convinced that the others were related, so I just didn't even talk about them. Mm-hmm. But if you want to look into it more, you can. There were a lot of other people, obviously, questioning connection, and, like I said, deep dive if you want. But Douglas also mentioned the ransom note, and I thought this was interesting. If kidnapping was the primary motive, the kidnappers would have researched their target. In this case, they would have found that $20,000 was way more than a year's salary for James Degnan. He didn't make that kind of money. So it all points to the fact that this, that and the fact that her body was found the next day, the note was just written as an afterthought or maybe even a distraction, right?
But I mean, the writing on the wall doesn't even match the writing on the note.
Thank you. No, I didn't think it did either.
This isn't rocket science,
no,
people.
No, it really isn't.
The handwriting is not even anywhere near.
And I mean, they don't even really use handwriting analysis as much these days, do they? Like, I kind of feel like it's like almost like they are not sure if it's a science that you can count on.
Right, but
I mean,
that just doesn't match at all. I'm not even saying use it to be guilty, but if I came across those, I wouldn't even think it was the same person. Even if someone wrote me a note like, hey, Jen, here's some brownies, because I would love some chocolate right now. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's why I printed those out, because I was hoping that you would think the same thing. No, they don't match at all. But no, I mean, I loved hearing his thoughts. He's so good. I take what he has to say with quite a bit of weight when it comes to pretty much any and all deep dive cases. So I always kind of go, I wonder what John Douglas thought about this one, if he looked into this one at all, because he's amazing. I love everything he has to say. It's fantastic. But as for William Heirens, in 2002, Lawrence C. Marshall filed a petition on his behalf seeking clemency. The appeal was eventually denied. Former Los Angeles police officer Steve Hodel, and this is where I was like, gosh darn it, I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong. It's either Hodel or Hodel. I'm going to go with
I think it's Hodel.
I think it's Hodel too. Thank you. Maybe I said it right the first time. Okay. So Steve Hodel, who had spent 25 years on the force, met Heirens in 2003 when he was investigating the murders. He was convinced that Heirens was innocent of the crimes. And he said, and I quote, "I felt compelled to write an appeal to the Illinois Prisoner Review Board stating my professional belief that Heirens is innocent." And Heirens' most recent parole hearing was held on July 26, 2007. The Illinois Prisoner Review Board decided unanimously, unfortunately, 14-0, the vote against the parole, against his parole. And Thomas Johnson stated that, and I quote, "God will forgive you, but the state won't." So they unanimously said, "No, you're still staying in here." So after being taken to the University of Illinois Medical Center on February 26, 2012 due to complications from diabetes, Heirens died only days later on March 5th at the age of 83.
He spent a long life in prison.
A long time. He was, and I don't think I wrote this down, but I think he was Illinois' longest serving inmate. I mean, at 17 going in, you would be. It's a long time.
That's a long time.
It's a very long time. And as I promised, I do have one last thing to note because it caught my attention when I was sifting through the 51 possible serial killers to talk about this month. But I'm interested in hearing if you know the connection. Okay, so in 2009, that same Steve Hodel, right, that was the officer, published a book titled Most Evil, Avenger, Zodiac, and the Further Serial Murders of Dr. George Hill Hodel, his father.
Yes.
So he writes this book, right? The book examined the possibility that Hodel had also committed crimes outside of Los Angeles. Do you know this?
Yes.
Oh, damn. I was so hoping to surprise you with this one because I didn't know this.
That's
the
only
so
why
cool.
I know it's Hodel.
Yeah, right? When you said that and corrected me, I was like, God damn it. Oh, well. That's okay. There's got to be people out there that are listening that don't know this because this is crazy. So... most notably, obviously for us tonight, the one I want to talk about that they thought he was connected with were the lipstick murders. So according to the book, information in the district attorney's Hodel Black Dahlia files released in 2003 documented that the victim, Elizabeth Short, which is known as the Black Dahlia, for pretty much anyone in true crime knows about the Black Dahlia and what happened there. But approximately 6 months prior to her murder in June of 1946, she traveled to Chicago and began her own murder investigation into the lipstick murders. Sit with that for a minute. That's crazy. George Hodel was noted as an acquaintance and possible lover of Elizabeth's. So the files indicate that the Chicago coroner believed that the killer of one of the victims, 6-year-old Susan Degnan, he said, and I quote, had to have been a skilled surgeon as a, hemicorporectomy? Hemicorporectomy? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds right. Was performed on the child's body by cutting between the second and third lumbar vertebrae. Mm-hmm. This was a fine piece of surgery, is what he noted, right? Yep, That's crazy. Because, like we talked about, you can't do something like that with a hunting knife. I don't think that it's possible. So Steve believed that his father was responsible for both murders. He suspected that George Hodel discovered that Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, was investigating the Chicago murders. So he quit his job, doctoring in the UN and China at the time, and he returned to the U.S. to deal with it. Short was dead within 2 months. The theory here is that Short's killer performed surgery too closely comparable to that of the Degnan child case to be coincidental, and this is where I get chills. Because, and this, before I say that, the hemicorporectomy that I mentioned, and hopefully I'm saying that right, was also performed on her.
Oh, yeah, on the Black Dahlia.
And this is the part that I just, goosebumps. Her body was also placed off of a street named, you want to guess? Degnan.
I didn't even realize that.
That's what made me go, when I was researching this. And I looked it up, and it was, in fact, like a few blocks away from where her body was. Like, literally right there. That's like, crazy. How do you have chills right now? That's crazy.
That is crazy.
There's no way that's a coincidence.
I love that case. I mean, as much as you could love something that's sick.
No, I know. I think it's probably it's definitely one of the favorites for everybody because we want answers. Yeah. And I wanted to note, too, because it's also crazy. And I think the Zodiac case was probably the one that really started me down the path of true crime cases back in the day, because I love the Zodiac and I've seen like every movie and I've like really dove into it. Steve Hodel also believes he found evidence that links his father, George, to the San Francisco Bay Area Zodiac murders. He believes Hodel may have been the writer of the legitimate 1970 Zodiac coded cipher mailed to the San Francisco Chronicle. The proposed solution was sent in by M. Yves Person. I'm sure I'm saying her name wrong. She's French and I don't know how to say that. She's a high school teacher in Paris. And according to Person, George Hodel, using Ogham, which is an ancient Celtic alphabet, signed his real name, Hodel, Hodel, placing it both as the return address on the envelope and as the signature on the inside of the card, which read, "You ache to know my name. I'll clue you in." Mm-hmm. And I printed it out for you too. Look at this. There's the Zodiac note, and that's the Celtic writing, and it spells Hodel. Crazy, right? That's crazy. So, I mean, and who knows? I mean, all these conspiracy theories, like, really, I enjoy reading them because I think that's crazy.
I have to find the article that I read and send it to you about all this.
Yeah, no, you have to, because I must not have come across it.
Yeah, just about Hodel and that whole.
Oh, yeah.
That whole thing.
But no, as soon as I read that the two murders seemed so connected, and that Elizabeth Short came to Chicago to see about the murder, she wanted to look into it herself.
I'm still trying to figure out the why.
Like, why she would look into it?
Yeah, and why... Yeah.
Maybe she was like us. And there were no murder podcasts back then, so she was like, I'm going to travel to Chicago and I'm going to insert myself into this and see what's going on. It was like Crime Con for her. I mean, I don't know, right?
Real life. Yeah. No.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe, or could it be that she had a suspicion and that's why he had to kill her?
Yeah, could be.
Right? Yeah. She was like, wait, George was here and this is I mean, who knows? Who knows what she had or what she thought or what was, I don't know. Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Or maybe she found something like in his apartment and she thought, because, you know, I don't know, maybe she was snooping around or something, right? You know, you're like, oh, he's out of town. She's looking around. She finds this, she finds that. She thinks, oh my God, we'll never know. No. And that's what kills me.
Well, and I don't believe Heirens did it.
Oh, no.
Ever.
Oh, no.
That's the saddest part is... They pegged 3 murders on him, and I don't think he did one of them.
No, I don't think he did it, and that's another reason why I chose the case too. I just think it's so sad. But you know, it looked like so many people tried to help get him paroled, get him paroled and get him out, and so he had some time. But this case was so.
There's a political, like I said, there's a political aspect of it.
There is, and I don't know if
and nobody wanted to go against that?
No. Nobody wanted to overturn that example.
Well, and I don't even think, if I remember correctly, like, even his representatives, I don't think wanted to challenge. Mm-hmm. It was like one of those things where they just knew we're not going there. We're just...
This is it. We have to have our guy. We've spent enough time and money on this, and we need this to be locked away right
Everybody's now. Always in someone's pocket, unfortunately, in politics and in these situations.
No, you're right.
And
you're right.
I have to go back and reread about it again.
And, and then say George Hodel did do the Degnan case, right? That was him. Who committed the other 2 murders, and where are they? Did they get away? Probably not. You don't just stop doing that.
Oh, right. They probably went on.
They just moved on to another
city, another state, or maybe they ended up getting caught, but just not connected to these 2. Right. Because they're definitely not connected. I don't care what anyone says.
They're not connected. And I wonder if anybody would ever speak out and say, I was a member of the press and I wrote that note. You know what I mean?
Yes. On their like deathbed.
Yeah. So.
Well, that was a good one. I'm glad you did it because it had
you.
a different spin on the things I read and probably how I would have talked about it.
Yeah, I feel like our styles of sharing these stories are very different. I was thinking of that while I was reading. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I probably overshare many of the times, but
no, they're good. I like all of the things that you share. I appreciate it. I like your details, and I like the pictures. Thank you so much, and I promise I will give you pictures next time.
I don't know if did I show you the picture of did I show you the picture of William? I'll look for it and I'll show you because I've got it over here. But do we have a flipped script?
Oh,
I found it. There he is.
Oh,
he seriously reminds me of my grandpa.
He looks like the older brother in Wonder Years.
Yeah, he does. He's actually kind of cute.
Yeah, he's very cute.
Oh, speaking of my grandpa, he just turned 89.
Happy birthday,
Yay!
Grandpa!
That's a huge hooray, right? And he's still like rocking and rolling.
89.
Oh my gosh, he's amazing. He's still, he's still gardening and running around doing this and that. He tried to help my dad with the roof. I don't know. I was like, no, you can't go up there. You're 89. He's like, oh, I gotta help. It's okay. I mean, my dad literally has to like practically duct tape him to a chair to come over and like handle things that are too dangerous for him to do. But he's still like 29 at heart. And
that's,
running around
I think
doing
that's what
everything.
keeps you young.
It's amazing.
If you stay active, that's great. Happy birthday to him.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Grandpa.
You have longevity in your genes.
Yeah, we do. Grandma's she's still there too. Grandma and Grandpa, both of them.
Steve's Steve's family lives to like 100.
Yeah. My other great grandma, on my dad's side, actually, she lived to be 99.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to live that long though. Is that bad to say?
No, I don't think that's bad to say. As long as you're of sound body and mind, and you can. Yeah. I think that's okay. But if you can't move, that's just awful feeling.
As long as I can still have snack days and do all the things that I love.
Yeah. Like sit on the porch and yell at kids.
Get off my lawn. Get off my lawn. Like shake stuff and we have to have a bucket list of
that kind of thing.
Old people things to do. Yeah.
Well, Julia got her cast off, so
yay! That's right.
Good. She's cleared to start practicing low impact.
I bet she's so happy.
She is. So no vault, no bars, but she'll be back on the beam. And
so they say, and as soon as they turn their back, she's over there vaulting her little heart out.
Her and her coach and I talked, and the biggest thing, obviously, is making sure that the muscle loss isn't give her a different injury because her bone is healed, but they're just worried that she's going to think she can do something she can't because that arm is so weak and that she's going to end up with a different injury. So hopefully she takes it slow. Her first competition is the first weekend in December.
Oh, that's exciting.
She really, really wants to compete. I don't know.
But maybe it's not exciting because of COVID. Is she going to be able to
they're still having competitions. It's very limited on how it's being done. Just a little bit longer, less people, less spectators. Yeah. It's crazy. Gotcha. But they're still doing it. God help us, unless something else happens in between now and then. Right. I don't know if she's going to be ready for the first competition. Her ortho told her not to count on it.
So she's counting on it?
So she's counting on it. Because you know her.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll have to see what happens. But that's exciting that we don't have to worry about her cast or... Because you saw her wipe out on Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
With her poor cast.
Are you kidding?
That
kid is so
taken
prone
out of it.
to injury. Oh, my God.
I was so embarrassed. Julia. There's chunks taken out of it. Scrapes. It had grass stains.
Oh, my God. I was like, honey, how old is that? And she's like, we just bought it. I'm like, oh, yeah. Remember, she was like, Miss Tara, can you fix this? Can you sew that? And I was like, nah, it's super, it looks like you've been doing a lot of vamping. Yes. Keep it up. She's like,
vampire
what?
outfit.
Like, yeah, you're vamping.
It was shredded.
Oh, my God,
Her costume
there were
was
holes
shredded.
everywhere.
The whole entire arm sleeve was ripped up.
Well, and her splint looks like it's been through 3 car accidents.
Oh, yeah. Like
really
I said,
bad.
when she got her cast off, it had grass stains on it. And she was trying to use a magic eraser to clean it up before she went to the doctor to try to hide
the fact that she's been running around.
Yes. Yeah. Because no running.
I did this on the couch, I swear. My dog was chewing on my arm. Oh, Julia.
But anyways, so that's exciting. Well, I guess just happy Thanksgiving to everybody. We hope they have a wonderful, safe...
Happy Thanksgiving. You know, even if you can't be with your family, like we don't know if we are... I know it's coming down to the wire, but...
Do whatever makes you feel comfortable and happy, and your family comfortable and happy.
And maybe do that. This is kind of fun. If you guys are still like wanting all the decorations and the pumpkin stuff, I saw this really cute idea where you get like one of those white pumpkins. If you can find them. I know we were hard pressed to find white pumpkins. We had like yellow Bumby pumpkins. They turned into squash. But maybe just, or do something and just have everybody write down. So the cute idea that I saw was everybody wrote on the pumpkin what they were grateful for. And then they like had it as their decoration or their centerpiece. It just had all this stuff on it, which I thought was really, really cool. So maybe do something along that theme and still try to remind everybody what you're grateful for through this season, even though we can't all be together, you know. But
yeah, I agree. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So happy Thanksgiving. Stuff yourselves with all the good stuff, all the good food. Make sure you get that cranberry sauce.
And take a nap.
Don't forget it.
Take naps. A nap.
Yep.
Right.
All the good things.
Time.
Yep.
See you later.
See ya.